Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Tips to Make You a Better Hero. My name's Kenrick, and today I would like to talk about something really essential when playing Hero of the Storm: talents. Talents are Heroes of the Storm's equivalent to the items of other MOBAs. They are of utmost importance when it comes to playing your selected hero efficiently. More than in any other MOBA game, however, Heroes of the Storm wants you to pick a build that synergizes well with your team's composition due to the heavy focus on team-oriented fights and objective control, instead of, individual farming and split pushing, which is more often seen in other MOBAs. Alright, let's get to the nitty-gritty and talk about talents. Now, when it comes to talents, you're gonna have to keep one thing in mind. Are you playing on your own, or maybe duo queuing with a buddy, or are you playing competitively as a 5-man team? Depending on your answer, you're gonna want to change your choice of talents from time to time. The reason for that is quite simple. Depending on your party size, certain talents will become weaker or stronger. Let's take a look at Shrink Ray, for example. This talent has incredible potential if being used correctly by yourself and if your whole team responds correctly to it during a team fight. Just shrink a major threat like Illidan or Zeratul at the right moment and call your target to the teammates on TeamSpeak, and the results will be excellent. But what happens if you're playing in solo queue where you can't have quick and clear voice communication? Your allies might not even recognize your shrink target at all, simply because of the lack of communication. Now, don't get me wrong, the higher you climb in Hero League, for example, the more experienced your teammates will become, and team-dependent talents like Shrink Ray may have their relevance, even in solo queue, but especially to newer and less experienced players, it is often better to choose solo queue talents, as I call them. The question you should be permanently asking yourself when choosing certain talents, mostly activatable talents like Shrink Ray, Bribe, or Healing Ward, is: will my team be able to react accordingly, or will my talent just go poof without being of any use? To conclude this video, I would like to use Tassadar as a prime example and show you how solo queue builds can be very different from competitive builds, because he is a very popular, a very versatile, and a very accessible hero to play. Level 1. Like most other heroes, there are several options on Tassadar's level 1 talent. Try to look at the map you're playing on. Is it large? And could you make the game last longer than 50 minutes, like Garden or Dragonshire? Does it offer you a lot of possibilities to acquire extra health globes from mercenaries and bosses? Take Conjurer's Pursuit. If the map is smaller, or if you want to have increased range on your storm to interrupt enemies from taking objectives, like on Cursed Hollow for example, feel free to take either Overlord or Psi Fusion. Level 4. Healing Ward is too much utility to be overlooked in both solo and competitive 5-man queue. Unless you're facing a double stealth combo in your opponent's team, which would justify mental acuity in certain circumstances, you should never neglect the little healing buddy. Level 7. Here we encounter our first tough choice to make, depending on what play mode we're playing in. While Static Charge is a great tool to increase your own DPS in both solo and 5-man queue, you could also pick Call Down Mew in competitive play when you're able to coordinate defense on maps like Haunted Mines or Sky Temple, and no one else in your team could call the little robot. In solo queue, however, chances that some of your teammates will not defend properly. Instead, some of them could be doing mercenaries or other nonsense while you should actually defend, are quite high due to the lack of communication. So a mule may not always be worth taking in solo queue, whereas static charges will make you benefit even if allies are not paying attention. The crucial part here is to get a feeling of how well your team synergy and communication is. It is totally possible in higher tiers of play to benefit from mule even in solo queue games. Level 10. Unfortunately, Tassadar's Force Wall is still a very niche heroic ability that you should never ever take in solo queue, nor in 90% of 5-man matches, so just roll with the Archon here. Level 13. The more you progress through Tassadar's talents, the more you can adjust to the game situation you'll find yourself in. Shrink Ray, as previously mentioned, is a prime example of how it can totally make your day in a 5-man competitive play, when your team follows calls and nukes the right targets within seconds. In solo queue, however, even a well-timed Shrink Ray can do close to nothing if your teammates are not watching. Thus, my recommendation for solo queue is either Distortion Beams if your team lacks crowd control, or Prescience if you get the feeling you need some more protection on yourself. Level 16. If you went for Prescience on level 13, then Dimensional Warp is an obvious choice. It almost makes you unkillable, lets you reposition both aggressively or defensively. All these things feel like heaven in solo queue, where you're somewhat more dependent on yourself than in 5-man competitive mode. Here, Second Strike can be absolutely viable if your team lacks damage, or if you need to cover more ground against cloaked enemies like Zeratul or Nova. Level 20. In my personal opinion, most heroes offer at least 2 equally viable level 20 options. The same goes with Tassadar. In solo queue, you'll find yourself a lot more in unclean team fights because there is no shot calling in a classical sense. It's pretty much a every man for himself scenario with blind understanding and game knowledge being key for success. You will have to rely on your teammates without talking to them through voice. Thus, in my opinion, the safer route to success in solo queue is to go for the Twilight Archon heroic upgrade. The reason for this decision is simple. You're able to dish out tons of damage by relying on your own positioning and your own decision making. When playing in a 5-man competitive environment, Twilight Archon may still be a solid choice too, especially if your team is lacking damage, but here one may also think about picking up Storm Shield. The reason why a talent like Storm Shield to me is better in a 5-man composition is once again communication. You can let your allies know that you've got Storm Shield up, thus they will likely run towards you and group around you. Play more aggressively because they know they're gonna get shielded. Also, in a 5-man coordinated team fight, single targets with bad positioning may get picked off real quick. Storm Shield provides a nice little boost of bonus protection. All in all, it's a great tool to keep pushes going, to fight burst damage, and to make team fights go the way you want. In solo queue, that is not guaranteed at all. Alright guys, that's it for today. I hope you find this little tutorial on how to pick the right talents in the right play mode a little bit helpful. Don't forget to adjust your playstyle and talent choices according to whether you're playing in solo queue or competitive 5-man queue. Keep observing your teammates, try to get a feeling for how reliable and experienced they are, and if need be, try to communicate with them through in-game chat. The more of a team player you yourself are, the higher your chances for success will be. If you don't want to miss the next episode of Become a Better Hero, then feel free to hit that subscribe button. I would be very happy to welcome you again. Thank you everybody for watching and have a great day.